In the bustling city of Lagos lived Amarachi, a beautiful and hardworking woman from Anambra State. She was known not only for her striking looks but also for her intelligence and determination. Amarachi grew up from humble beginnings, but through her thriving catering business, she had built wealth and respect. It was during one of her business contracts that she met Chike, a charming man with smooth words and polished manners. Chike swept Amarachi off her feet with promises of love, loyalty, and partnership. Amarachi, believing she had found her life companion, married him within a year. She trusted him so deeply that she made the grave mistake of putting their family mansion, cars, and even her company documents in both their names. To her, love meant sharing everything. At first, Chike was attentive, doting, and protective. But as months passed, his true character began to show. He was careless with money, always entertaining women at nightclubs, and shamelessly flirting with Amarachi's maid, Kemi, right under her nose. Amarachi would cry to him about his ways, but instead of remorse, Chike would raise his voice, mock her, or worse, raise his hands against her. One night, after an intense argument where Amarachi confronted him about his affairs, Chike furiously drove off with her in the car. In his drunken rage, he swerved off the road and crashed. Amarachi's head slammed against the window. When she woke up days later in the hospital, she was blind. Her world turned dark. Instead of showing remorse, Chike became crueler. He insulted her for being useless and told her she was now a burden. Kemi, the maid who once served Amarachi, openly mocked her. She would whisper insults like, "You think Madam is still the queen? Look at you now, blind bat." Together, Chike and Kemi turned the house into a nightmare. One afternoon, after a heated quarrel, Chike and Kemi threw Amarachi out of her own mansion, giving her only a small bag of clothes. Amarachi wept bitterly on the roadside, humiliated and heartbroken. Neighbors whispered, but no one dared interfere. But fate was not done with Amarachi. She was taken in by an old friend, Ngozi, who sheltered her and encouraged her to undergo surgery abroad. With Ngozi's help and her own savings that Chike had not yet squandered, Amarachi traveled to India, where she underwent a delicate eye surgery. Months later, her sight was miraculously restored. When Amarachi saw her reflection in the mirror again, she vowed that the woman who had been mocked, betrayed, and discarded was gone. She was returning not as a victim, but as a storm. Back in Nigeria, Amarachi gathered legal documents, hired lawyers, and quietly set plans in motion. She discovered that Chike had forged her signature to sell parts of her land and had been parading Kemi as his new wife. The once proud mansion was now in shambles, with parties, reckless spending, and debtors knocking daily. One morning, Chike and Kemi hosted friends for a loud party at the mansion. Suddenly, expensive cars pulled into the compound. Out stepped Amarachi, dressed elegantly, her eyes clear and fierce. Silence fell. "Amarachi?" Chike stammered, his glass of wine trembling. Kemi gasped, clutching her wrapper. But you were blind." Amarachi smiled coldly. "You thought blindness was the end of me? No, it was only the beginning." With a wave of her hand, police officers and lawyers presented court orders. Every property, house, cars, business, was traced back to her as the rightful owner. Chike and Kemi were ordered to vacate immediately. Their sham of power crumbled before their eyes. As they were dragged out of the mansion, Amarachi said calmly, "The stone you rejected has become the cornerstone. You mocked me when I stumbled in darkness, but today I stand in light. Let this be your lesson." The crowd outside cheered as Amarachi, restored and stronger than ever, walked back into her mansion, not as a blind, broken woman, but as a queen who had reclaimed her throne. After Amarachi reclaimed her mansion and properties, the whole city buzzed with her story. Many marveled at how the woman who was mocked for being blind had returned with her sight to disgrace her enemies. But Amarachi knew this was only the beginning. Chike was not a man who gave up easily, he was a snake, and snakes strike hardest when cornered. Chike and Kemi had been reduced to squatting in a shabby hotel on the outskirts of Lagos. Their riches were gone, their fake friends had deserted them, and hunger pressed them daily. Yet, Chike's pride remained intact. Instead of repentance, he plotted revenge. He swore Amarachi would never enjoy her victory in peace. Kemi, bitter and angry at losing her comfort, encouraged him, her tongue sharp with insults. Amarachi, however, was not afraid. She had learned in her suffering that fear is a chain that binds the weak, but courage breaks the chains. With her sight restored and her strength renewed, she began working with lawyers to expose every fraud Chike had committed. She discovered he had forged her signature, diverted funds from her company, and even attempted to sell lands that belonged to her family. Amarachi gathered every document patiently, knowing the law was on her side. The day of the court hearing arrived. The courtroom was filled to the brim with curious faces, neighbors, old friends, and even strangers who had come to witness the downfall of a man who once paraded himself as wealthy and untouchable. Chike entered the court in a crumpled suit, his face swollen with worry. Kemi followed behind him like a shadow, her former arrogance replaced with shame. When the judge called on Amarachi, she stood tall, dressed in a flowing white gown that symbolized purity and victory. Her voice was steady as she told her story. The love she had given, the betrayal she endured, the accident that left her blind, the cruelty she suffered under Chike and Kemi, and the miracle of her healing. Her words pierced the hearts of all who listened. Many in the court wept quietly, and even the judge had to clear his throat before speaking. Chike, in his defense, tried to twist the truth. He claimed it was a marital misunderstanding, that everything he took was his right as a husband. But the judge was not fooled. The evidence Amarachi presented was overwhelming. Chike was declared guilty of fraud, forgery, and abuse. He was sentenced to prison, while all assets he had touched were returned to Amarachi. Kemi too was not spared, she was charged for conspiracy and theft, dragged away in tears. When Amarachi walked out of the courtroom, the people outside hailed her. Some called her Nwanyi Obi Ike, the woman with a strong heart. Others said she was proof that no condition is permanent. Amarachi smiled, but deep within, she knew her true victory was not in seeing Chike and Kemi fall, but in standing again after life had pushed her to the ground. In the months that followed, Amarachi blossomed like a flower after heavy rain. She rebuilt her catering empire and turned it into one of the biggest event companies in Lagos. She also established a foundation to support widows and the visually impaired, saying, "If God restored my sight, then I must restore hope to others." Ngozi, her faithful friend who had stood by her in her darkest days, often teased her. "Amarachi, you have conquered wealth, conquered betrayal, and even conquered blindness. Is it not time to conquer love again?" Amarachi would laugh and shake her head, saying, "Love will come when the season is right. For now, my duty is to lift others who are falling, just as I once fell." Her story spread far and wide, inspiring women in villages and cities alike. To the poor, she became a symbol of hope. To the betrayed, she became a symbol of strength, and to the proud and wicked like Chike, she became a warning. And so it was said, "Do not mock the one who stumbles in darkness, for tomorrow they may rise in light and leave you in shadows." The end.